cult members of Welcome to Pop Culture Cult. I'm Sean.
I'm Janice.
And welcome to our discussion and reaction review of Andor episode 12. This one is called Rick's Road. It is the funeral for Marva, which is what we all expected it to be. I did not expect it was a call to arms, but, you know, we'll get into that.
I did.
Not from Marva.
Oh, yeah.
Not from Marva.
Yeah. But of course.
Right. Of course it was her. Spoilers, if you haven't gotten that. We are going to talk about real world politics. Not that anybody has complained about that in our comments, but some people have complained about that in other reviews of Andor, about the direct parallels between the real world and what is going on in this show. Hence, Star Wars is for everybody. Everyone. It has been very interesting to watch the story of the oppressor versus the oppressed, and how it came to a head on this episode. And those who are being oppressed did not win.
Well, we don't know that.
There was no, we've taken back the planet.
Right, but I mean, ultimately it ended in the middle of all of that.
Yeah.
So you can't really say they did or didn't win.
Fair. That's fair. I'm projecting a little bit. But they were not doing very well when the stormtroopers came in and started actually hitting people.
Right. But
because stormtroopers never hits anybody until it's plot time.
But I thought these weren't stormtroopers.
These are stormtroopers. These are stormtroopers. The guys in the black outfits are the Death Troopers. That were around Deirdre,
right, and
stuff. So let's talk about. If you have not been through one of our reviews yet, we'll go all over the place. You've been warned. I want to talk about first Barracks itself, and it's telling Cassian you shouldn't be here, but we're glad you're here.
Right. Well, they don't want him to be there because they know that there's all these spies and open, Empire people all over the place waiting for him to get there.
Yeah.
So I thought it was interesting that people that you thought was his friend actually weren't. I kept waiting for people who had were giving information. There was the one guy I don't know what his name was, but I thought maybe he was gonna plant a bomb in the little
in the control office or whatever.
Yeah.
I thought the same thing.
But yeah, they didn't want him to be there because they knew what was going to happen. But I mean, I think maybe Marva did too, and so she was calling them to arms.
I don't want to say refreshing, but it was definitely nice to see that. You ever watched a movie and thought, like, this is just visually amazing, and I just love the way it looks, and the colors are amazing. Well, our friends over at Movie Palette have come up with these great pieces of art that you could put up on your wall to show your love of movies without really necessarily being overly dramatic about it. Think of a movie barcode kind of thing, where you can look at the colors and know what the movie is, but it's very, very subtle. If you know us, we are into Tron Legacy. The music and the lights and the color itself is just amazing. Just to give you an idea of what they have. Go to moviepalette.com. Find your own personal favorite movie, your movie color palette, and have it hang on your wall. At checkout, put in Pop Culture 15 to get 15% off. Thank you, Movie Palette, for sponsoring this video. Link is in the description down below. And don't forget, use Pop Culture 15 at checkout to get 15% off your order. The people of Ferrix itself cared for the other people of Ferrix.
Yeah.
Outside of one or two people who are just going to be those kind of people who are looking to make as much coin or to do, to better themselves. And that's just going to happen. But for the for the most part, everyone was there for each other. And that was set up in day one, in episode one, when they started showing everybody going off to the mine. I guess is. I mean, I don't think they ever really said. No, it's the tearing apart of the
Yeah,
ships.
they
The
tear apart the
ships.
ships. Yeah, it's a
But it
jump
was just
planet.
everybody like making sure everybody's okay and
Yeah.
checking each other's gloves and
Yeah.
and just that the physical representation of the gloves on the wall. And as the season went along, less of them were on the walls. It was just a visual thing that I happened to catch in this episode.
Yeah.
But it was just when Cassian got there, everybody gave him a big hug and then kind of smacked him in the face. What are you doing here?
Yeah.
Kind
Yeah.
of thing. And it was. I liked it. I liked that. That's how they approached this climax of this story of the roots of the rebellion starting to take hold.
Right. And I mean, I think it's to be expected if they're all, they're all pretty much Ferrexers,
Phyrexians.
Phyrexians, Ferrexi, um, and their entire planet is being oppressed.
Yeah.
That they're going to want to try to stick together because it's them, them against the bad guy, them against the Empire. So, I mean, I think that um, adversary. I don't think that's a word. We're just gonna make up words tonight.
I do it all the time. It's fine.
um, is what brings them to has the potential to bring them together, and
Right,
that's what
right.
it did for. And especially, these are like, kind of hardworking. Uh, Not that there's this in Star Wars, but like lower middle class,
Right,
like
right.
the coal miners and steel workers of Pittsburgh,
Yeah,
right?
yep.
They're and but then there's this big bad guy, and like Marva said in her speech, we were all just kind of happy to go along to get along, but while we were sleeping, they were getting more powerful.
I like the rust analogy because she made the it's true. The Empire slowly inserts themselves
Mhm.
into a population, an area, a planet, in its quadrant, and they slowly start taking more and more liberties away from those locally. They did that with the indigenous people when they were doing the bank heist on
Mhm.
that planet, which I
Mhm.
can't remember off the top of my head. But how they made a point that you know 10, 15,000 people would show up for this light show,
Mhm.
and then there was like what 100 in the
Yeah.
last one because they
Yeah.
kept slowly they introduced bars along the way
Yeah.
and like all this stuff,
Yeah.
and so it's very interesting. Again, we're going to talk about the real world stuff that some in political offices, not just in the states but all over the world, those who think much the same way the Empire thinks, does the same exact thing. They introduce they insert themselves slowly but surely into a system that ultimately gives them more power. They start taking, you know, you have to get a permit to have a parade, and then the next
Yeah.
time you have to have, you need to get a permit and $10,000 to have a parade, and
Yeah.
then the next time you have to so they give it's that kind of thing. And here on Ferrix, they have slowly started to take away the traditions, and that's why they made such a the Phyrexians made such a
Phyrexian.
big deal of a show of solidarity, but also a show of their own force. When everyone showed up, even though they told Deirdre, they told them 30, the daughters pushed, and we gave them 40.
Right.
There was more than 40 people in the square.
Yeah. Well, and they weren't supposed to start until 2, and they started at noon, like
yeah.
they said they wanted to, and so that was kind of a sly rebellion, right?
Right.
They're rebelling against their rules, um, which is interesting because they didn't really explain that, right? So they seemed shocked at Marva's speech, like
Right.
even the people close to her seemed surprised kind of at what she was saying, but they they still did these kind of rebellious acts for her parade, her funeral, whatever. So it's like, did they know? Did
I
they?
think everyone who ultimately ends up on the ship knew. They were the ones who were closest to
Right,
Marva and Cassian,
right,
and so all of them knew this was kind of the thing, and they even Brasso even told Cassian that Marva's kind of last little speech was one of the things in there was uh he is the initial this is the initial spark to light the flame
right,
to 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 get the rebellion going.
right.
And when the initial speech from Marva starts to happen, Luthen is there because Luthen and Val and Cinta are there to kill Cassian
Right.
because they think that he's a loose string that they need to get rid of.
Yeah.
And so they're there and they're letting the Empire do all the heavy lifting to find Cassian.
Yeah.
And then they're going to kill Cassian
Right.
in the prison cell. But when Marva is giving her speech, Luthen is engaged in the speech. And he doesn't give a smile with his lips, but his eyes, because Stellan Skarsgård is freaking amazing, he has that moment of, oh, wait, this is working.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so all of that kind of culmination of everything is just it is, even though like I said, I'm projecting, I feel that the Phyrexians, I'm just gonna make up a new one, uh, lost or were losing in their riot, their attempt to regain some level of control on their planet. Um, the spark is there.
Right. And I mean, okay, they may have lost that initial
Savo.
sure, Sabo. But potentially, and I think they probably will, they'll back up, they'll regroup, because like you said, if only that small little group that was closest to Marva knew what was coming, the rest of the town didn't really have an opportunity to prepare.
Right.
But now, I mean, these are again, these are hardworking people. They've got tools. They're the Scottish, right?
Right.
They may not have guns and lightsabers, but they've got sticks and rocks, and
Yeah.
they know how to use them.
Yeah. And the reason I'm agreeing with you is when the riot starts, nobody from Ferrex is actually carrying
Anything.
anything.
Yeah.
They're there
Any
for
kind
the
of a
funeral.
weapon. Yeah.
And Marva using that opportunity to spark the initial flame
Right.
is the point. Like, it's the whole point of everything, and I really love that they allow that to play out and let the people of Ferrex actually make their own decision.
Right. And the fact that obviously some of the people, like especially the people in the very front that were pushing on the line and stuff, are potentially dead. That's just going to make those people who were like, no, let's just go
Yep.
along to get along. That's going to push a lot more of them over the edge to be mad.
There wasn't the escalation of the bomb taking out the little enforcer tank thing, and then that had bombs on it, so that exploded.
Right.
So
That good shot.
That escalation is actually good. Like, I at some point in time, you have. I don't want to say this because in war, escalation is terrible, but for what's happening to those who are being oppressed, they have to do something. And if they just go and push on shields, that's nothing. There has to be something.
Right.
And so with throwing of the homemade bomb, and then the Empire's natural reaction was just to open fire on everybody.
Right.
Well, instead of trying to do some kind of suppression or trying to de-escalate the situation, all they did was escalate the situation.
Yeah, they don't know how to de-escalate.
The guy who's in charge of the whole planet with his stupid cape, goes running out there and throws his cape over B2 and it kicks B2 over. We're fighting the Empire just on that.
Right. But B2's fine.
B2's fine.
He's fine.
And so is Brasso. So I was happy. But I just the meaning of all of that, and this the kind of what the whole show has been about, and kind of leading this way towards that is just some people. I have not seen it. I am waiting for somebody to say this felt anticlimactic, but it was never going to be a big pew pew fight. The pew pew fight isn't happening yet. The pew pew fight's coming in 5 years.
Yeah, I was going to say the climax is Rogue One.
Right. That's the yeah. Right.
This is a good and right ending to this season.
Yep.
This season has been about Cassian's road to joining the rebellion.
Yep, and not just Cassian, but also Mothma's, Luthen's.
Right, but we didn't get any closure on Mothma.
No, and I didn't expect closure with Mothma.
Right, I'm saying this season,
yes,
has been Cassian's road to joining the rebellion.
Let's talk about Cassian, because this is actually the Andor show, and usually we wait 25 minutes before I actually get him. Him showing up to Ferrix, we talked about him and getting hugs from everybody, and then slaps across the faces. What are you doing here? Him watching the funeral, but the funeral is just a big distraction to get Bix out.
Right.
And the fact that he was willing to risk so much to free her, and that she was able to hold herself together long enough for someone to come get her.
Yeah.
Is just like I just even when Cassian gets there into her cell, he is so understanding of where she is. He has no idea what they did to her.
Right.
No idea.
Right.
But he knows that she's in trouble, and he cares about her enough to take the time to kind of get to her. And then when the explosion happened, oh yeah, let's get out. But
yeah.
He did the same thing that Brasso did to B2, was to be that comforting person for the person who needed it at that point in time.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously it was important to get her out. She's, like you said, she's been holding on. She hasn't given him up. Whether or not he specifically knows that, he knows her, and he probably feels that she wouldn't. Although, like you said, he has no idea what they've done to her. And I mean, from what we know, her giving up information would have been completely understandable.
Right,
so,
right.
But she didn't, and so that's like his dedication to her, or their dedication to each other, or friendship, or whatever is, you've got to go. She's made it this long. We've got to go get her.
Yeah. Brasso's talk to him about what Marva said, and the final piece is that she said he loves him beyond anything else, is something that I think Cassian really needed to hear, because when he first gets to Ferrix, he goes over to Clem's brick,
mm-hmm.
and they have a little bit of a flashback scene about how
he was being a dad.
He was being a dad, but I just love that whole conversation of, they tell you that you have to get a new piece, and it's 10 times what it was worth when you bought the last piece.
Yeah.
And if you just look down, you can see that, there's some rust on this, but it's still good. You just need to foster it and clean it. And so imagine that. Imagine there's 10 of these at $500 or 500 coin a piece. We're sitting on a small gold mine here, so we can actually just pay our bills, kind of thing. It was just a really cool, like, dad moment, like, reflection. And then to hear Brasso tell him that Marva loved him,
mm-hmm.
even though people forget, like, they saved him when he was, they took him when he was a young child.
Yeah.
And so
that could have gone so many other ways for Cassian,
right.
But they were, good people, and they took him and cleaned him up and taught him to be a human being, or I guess they're humans.
Oh, yeah, they're humans, but also taught him how to be a good person, but also a person with skills.
Yeah.
That he is able to use to steal some stuff. Let's be honest, but ultimately those skills will be what he uses
Yeah,
as a
absolutely.
spy for the rebellion as we get into the thing. Um, at the end, let's talk about him showing up on Luthen's ship. Luthen, you know, everything goes to hell. Luthen decides to leave instead of trying to find Cassian because I think at that point in time he understands that what he wanted is now in motion. It no longer matters if Cassian is captured and it gets out there. The rebellion is kind of the seeds have been planted.
Well, and he can't be caught there.
Right, right.
I mean, if he gets, shot in crossfire or, detained as a person of Ferrex, that's gonna blow his whole cover. So he
right.
needs to get out
He
of
needs to
there.
get out. So him going back to his ship, and the ship doesn't listen to his commands because Luthen has rearranged the furniture.
Because Luthen has?
Cassian has redone and the thing that popped in my mind was Demolition Man when Wesley Snipes' character changes all the voice activation for the one guy's office. It was the same. That's the same thought I had in my head. But Cassian says to Luthen, "You came here to kill me. Like I know you're here to kill me."
Yeah.
And he like looks down and he leaves his gun for Luthen to pick up, and he's like, kill me or take me in.
Yep.
And because the entire setup of them getting ready for the funeral, Cassian's listening to the manifesto.
Yep.
And he finally gets to the point in his own after spending the time in prison on Narkita 5, and he finally gets to sit down with the manifesto. He's seeing what the Empire is doing. He hears the words that are there. He is now ready to join the cause, and the person he knows who's doing that cause is Luthen.
Right.
And so, giving the option to Luthen, I'm here. You came to kill me, or use me.
Right.
And again, with that conversation we were having earlier about Marva telling the people, we've let this happen. You need to choose to do something about it.
Yep.
And now, again, here it is as a parallel. I've been talking about parallels the entire way of this show. Here's another parallel where Cassian has accepted his fate of being killed, but he doesn't think it's going to happen. But he really is ready to give everything to free the everyday people, and he gives that option to Luthen. And Luthen's smile of his realization of I just got a really invaluable piece for my chessboard.
Yeah.
is awesome. And I just think that whole kind of setup. I was wondering how they were going to rectify this, how Cassian gets there and really becomes a member of the rebellion with Luthen. I really thought Luthen was going to die in this episode, last 2 or 3 episodes, because the claws have been the gates have been kind of closing in around Luthen. Even though they didn't know that they were closing the gates around Luthen,
Right.
but I was wondering if they were going to let Luthen move forward, and then they'll most likely kill him off about halfway through the season next year or next
Maybe.
next
Yeah,
season because
maybe.
because we don't know of him already, and so Brasso and Bix and B2 and everybody on the ship, there's a good out for them. They've been freed. They can go live their lives. They're not going to be part of the rebellion, or they will. I mean, leaves storytelling wise, it leaves it open.
I mean, he could be part of the rebellion someplace else.
Right,
I
right.
mean,
That's
it's a
fair.
big galaxy, so
That's true. And they in the manifesto, they one of the things they talk about was cells are forming all over the place, and eventually they're all going to learn that everybody's fighting the same fight.
yeah.
And so Luthen could be setting up. I mean, we know he's been setting up cells all over the place and
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
Uh, Cyril,
Cyril.
Cyril, Phyrexians. Um, um, him showing up to Ferrex really felt like it was going to be Cassian, like he was going to be the one that blew Cassian's cover. But no, he was there to save Deirdre.
Well, he didn't know he was there to save Deirdre.
No,
because he didn't know she was there.
Right.
But he got the opportunity, which means I don't know. I don't know what that means. The two of them are icky. So
they are. They're so icky together. But
I don't know. They're just icky. They're icky apart too. They're just icky people. I told him, I was like, I really wanted to see the crowd tear Deirdre apart.
Yeah.
I mean, they didn't, and they're the potential bad couple now moving into next season. You've got to have something left over. Still searching for Cassian or whatever.
Right.
But
they're so icky, and Deirdre. I'm going to say it both ways. Her adrenaline still pumping through her body, and her looking at Cyril.
It's not cereal. It's not the blue
Cyril
or whatever. Cyril.
Her still with the adrenaline going through her body, paused long enough to go, I think I'm supposed to say thank you. Because she's always been the one who's done something for herself.
Right.
She's always been the one who's rescued herself. She's always been the one doing the work for herself with no other help.
Well, and I mean, I don't know that it's necessarily, I didn't feel like it was adrenaline. I think she was genuinely scared. And just like Cyril, these, everybody in a white uniform, they've never been in this hand-to-hand,
where I was going,
gonna rip you apart combat.
Yep.
And so, that's gonna give her potentially an edge when she gets back to, that room, that panel.
room, yeah.
Because, all these other guys in there are trying to give her a hard time and stuff, and she's like, I was almost torn apart by a mob. So,
Right.
So yeah, I kind of felt like it was more like scared and, and yeah, now it's gonna give her a different kind of power.
And motivation.
Yeah.
And a motivation, because the Krieger stuff happened while she was gone, and they didn't leave anybody alive.
Yeah.
And on her comm call back to headquarters, she said, we cannot interview dead people.
Right.
And so she was not happy that they pulled this. That's not the right word, because she knew that it was happening. But them killing everybody off, leaves them like they created their own dead end with the idea of finding access. And so, like, just the idea that, like, she's playing on multiple levels, and most of the rest of the ISB officers are playing at their own little thing. Of course she's going to get mad, because she's trying from her point of view of getting as much information as she can for the Empire to get rid of every little rebellion cell that's out there. And the rest of the ISB agents are all just looking for a check mark in on their tally sheet.
Yeah.
Say, look, I got rid of a cell. Aren't I a cool guy?
Yeah.
She's trying to get rid of all of those cells.
Yeah.
And she can't do it if you keep killing off all these different things. And so of course she's mad, but her now having been on the ground when things happen, she's got to have a new perspective on everything that's going on. It's no longer just data and numbers and procedure and policy and enforcement and stuff like that.
Right.
So she's going to have a fresh perspective to bring into that room that's going to be very interesting to see kind of how they continue on with that part of the story.
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately she's just not going to, she hasn't backed down necessarily, but she has, her her second had to kind of step up for her a couple of times, and
Yeah.
she's let the head guy, um, help her win her battles when they're all in the room,
Right.
talking.
Right.
And I think that um, she's gonna probably come in with a whole new, like, you know, she'll be defending herself
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. She will be the BD energy in the room now, and when she walks in there, with her, like if I was her, I'm not kidding. If I was her, I would go get me off Ferrex, get me back to ISB office. I will not even cleaning up. I'm
Yeah,
getting right off the
go
ship.
in.
I'm going in with a dirty uniform that's torn, with Cyril on my arm or over my shoulder as like a new agent to work for me,
Yeah.
and just walk in and just flip it down on the table. Like we're playing by a different set of rules in a new game now. Let's talk about the Mothma stuff. There wasn't a ton this episode. Her going to her husband and saying that he's gambling again and stuff definitely sets up um, the idea that this is a way for her to hide the money.
Yeah.
Um,
That's what I thought, because
yeah,
they were having this conversation in the car. The driver could hear.
yeah,
She knows that he's spying on her, that
yeah.
the driver is spying on her. And, she was accusing him of gambling again. And he was like, I don't know what you're talking about. And I really kind of sort of believed him.
Yeah, yeah. This is one of the few times I actually thought he was in the right.
Yeah.
And Mothma was
And then
in
the
the
driver
wrong.
went and, kind of told on her, that they thought that the husband she accused her husband of gambling or whatever. So that would be a good way for her to cover up the money.
Yep.
However,
They did at the end. They did do the setup of her daughter and the gangster dude's son.
Yeah,
and
but the daughter seemed like she seemed happy about it.
And they kind of set that up in the previous episode,
Right?
With her kind of doing the
Following
preaching
the
of
old
the
ways.
of the old ways, and Val even trying to like kind of point out like, what is this?
Right.
And she's like, no, she did it on her own.
Yeah.
And we talked about it last week too, about, is this now a way that Mothma can actually use, even though that she doesn't want to do it, she doesn't want to sacrifice anything that she has, specifically her daughter. Her husband could die in a grease fire. I'm pretty sure that's all that she really cares about. But she doesn't want to sacrifice her daughter. And we talked about how everybody is making sacrifices to get the rebellion going. Well, this is a sacrifice that she doesn't really have to sacrifice, because the daughter is making the choice for her, and she is just along the road of saying, okay, this is what you want to do. I'm going to use it for political means.
Yeah, I just sitting here talking through it, I'm thinking maybe she'll use her husband supposedly gambling as an out for the missing money, but now she's got a favor with the gangster guy. She doesn't need the money anymore. She's going to use use what happened as a piece to a bargaining chip for whatever. And it's okay because her daughter was really happy about it.
She's gonna feel bad. She's gonna feel sad about it, but I don't think she's gonna feel guilty about it.
It's kind of it kind of ended up being a win-win.
Yeah, and that's kind of interesting too, because we all, as Mothma has been presented to us, she is the righteous good of the rebellion.
Yeah,
she's always the one who says we shouldn't go into the fight until everybody's ready to go into the fight. She's the one who wants to fight cleanly and honestly, and not do Saw dirty tactics or Luthen dirty tactics. She doesn't want to do bloodshed, but she understands bloodshed as part of what they have to do to get this done. And so this is a way for her to kind of keep that level of honesty with herself, but still get something that she needs.
Yep.
With this, now she has a favor, and now she has another piece. Just like Luthen just got another piece with Cassian.
Right.
Now she has another piece to kind of do whatever.
Yep.
Let's talk about the post-credit scene. I was wrong. I'm willing to admit it. It's fine. The things that they were building on Narkina 5 were actually the connection pieces for the satellite dish for the Death Star.
Yep.
It's what most people said. I was bucking the trend because it was like 500 to 1 odds, and I was worth the shot for $1 bet. But uh, I knew that they were building something for the Death Star. Like it, it makes the most sense within the story as I know it, and then within the story that we watched on the show.
Yeah.
that they're building something for the Death Star, and so and they're and of course they're bringing more and more people in because you have seen the size of the Death Star; it's gigantic.
Right. And you know, you got to make 2 at twice the price.
Right. We're gonna make all the references tonight. Is there anything else in this episode that we want to talk about? I don't
No.
think.
No.
I mean, there's a bunch of
Just
tiny stuff.
A lot. Yeah.
But I think for the most part, we get the big main themes and main kind of conversations that we're
Yeah.
going to go on. Like I said, we're gonna try to rewatch this over the next week or so and come back and
All
do
together.
all
Yeah.
together
Do a big binge.
over probably a couple of days and actually just kind of have a conversation about the direct parallels that are going on with this show in the real world
Yeah.
and why this show was A, so good, but B, why it's so important.
Yep.
I feel the show is super important for what the conversation is going on in the real world, especially here in the States and the UK. And
I
so
was
it's
thinking of like Iraq.
and Iraq and learning more about Qatar with the World Cup going on. It's just it's Star Wars has always been a magnifying glass of the real world, wrapped up in laser swords and spaceships.
Yep.
And this didn't have many. This had no laser swords and only a couple of spaceships. And so,
Except for the 2 that came out of Luke's
I see.
ship.
I'm still pissed we didn't find out the Luthen's those Jedi.
You got more.
We got a whole new season. Second season, 12 episodes, 5-year arc. This was a 1-year arc. That'll be a 5-year arc, and it'll be ending going into Rogue One.
Yep.
So
Which will be sad because then it'll be over.
It'll be over, but we will eventually get to the conversation of what that season could be, what we think is coming. K2, what we think is going to be the Mothma speech. We've kind of talked about that over and over again, but the theme of the true oppression of the Empire is really starting to get set right now.
Yep.
So, let us know what you thought of this episode and our review of it in the comments down below. Please be nice. It's a requirement around here. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications. Follow us on all the social media stuff, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. Links are in the description down below. And until next time, cult members, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.